Hey Reddit, I'm a 30-year-old guy, let's call me Mike, and I've been dealing with some seriously messed up family dynamics lately. I'm not sure if I'm the bad guy here, but I need to get this off my chest. It's been building up for months, and now I've reached a point where I can't stay quiet anymore. Here's some context. I grew up in a pretty traditional household. Both of my parents, let's call them Karen and Jim, worked hard to keep food on the table. They always had a sense of entitlement when it came to things like family duty. You know, the idea that the family should always look out for each other, no matter what. They put a lot of pressure on me and my siblings to do the right thing. And while I always did what they expected, I never really bought into the whole family above all mentality. I was the quiet, responsible one. Then there's my brother, Adam. He's 2 years younger than me and has always been a little, well, reckless. Where I kept my head down and focused on my career, Adam was the kind of guy who thought rules were for everyone else. You see, Adam was never really serious about anything. In school, he barely scraped by. He couldn't keep a job for more than 6 months, and he kept bouncing from one amazing business idea to the next. Some of these ideas were honestly laughable. Like, when he tried to start a dog walking service that he totally failed at, but he made sure to post it all over social media like he was the next Elon Musk. Even his side hustles were failures, and by side hustles, I mean he sold stuff on eBay for a few months and treated it like it was his big break. But things came to a head about a year ago when Adam told my parents that he was starting his dream business. They were all over it, of course. I was skeptical, but they were convinced he had finally found his calling. He pitched it as some innovative startup in the tech industry. I didn't understand the specifics, but I wasn't really interested in the details because I figured it'd be another one of his doomed projects. That's when things started getting weird. My parents, Jim and Karen, decided they were going to help him out. They didn't ask me, didn't talk to me about it. They just did it. They spent their life savings to fund Adam's business. And by that, I mean they put everything they had into it. They didn't even blink before handing over the money. They said it was an investment in the family's future, and they expected me to be happy for Adam, to support him, to be proud. I was furious, not because I didn't want Adam to succeed, but because my parents were basically throwing away everything they had to finance a loser's pipe dream. I tried talking to them about it, but they guilt-tripped me, saying that I was being unsupportive and selfish for not helping my brother pursue his dream. I pointed out that Adam had no business sense, no plan, no real experience. But they just waved me off. He's family, Mike. We have to help him. You should want to help him, they told me. At first, I held my ground. I was angry, but I didn't want to cause too much drama. I told them that if they wanted to help him, fine, but I wasn't going to put myself in the position of bailing him out when things inevitably fell apart. They didn't listen. They were so sure he would succeed. Fast forward a few months. Adam's business is already sinking faster than a lead balloon. The entire thing was a mess. Instead of focusing on the product or any kind of strategic plan, Adam spent the money on flash and appearances, fancy office space that he couldn't afford, hiring people he didn't need, and of course, throwing launch parties that ended up being nothing more than an excuse for him to hang out with his friends. He started buying extravagant things for himself, designer clothes, expensive tech gadgets, while my parents were living on a tight budget after draining their savings to help him. I had no sympathy for him. And my parents? They didn't see it. They refused to acknowledge how reckless Adam was being with their money. But that didn't stop them from coming to me, asking for more. They started calling me every other week, saying they needed more financial help. Mike, you're doing well. We've helped you so much over the years. It's time for you to step up for your brother, they'd say. Every time I tried to explain that I couldn't just hand over money, they guilt-tripped me even harder. He's your brother, Mike. We're counting on you to help. Don't you want to see him succeed? Eventually, it reached a point where I couldn't take it anymore. I tried to explain that they were enabling his behavior, that they were just perpetuating his failure by rescuing him over and over. But no matter what I said, it was always the same. You have to help. It's what family does. It was at that point that I stopped responding to their calls. I still kept my distance, but they kept pushing. Then came the final straw. One afternoon, I get this text from my mom. Hey Mike, we really need your help. Adam's business is officially bankrupt. He's broke, and we don't have the money to help him anymore. Can you please send over a few thousand to help him get back on his feet? I was done. No more being guilted into this. Instead of agreeing to give them money or even offering a compromise, I decided to make them face the reality of what was really going on. So I did something petty, something satisfying. I didn't respond right away. I waited a few days. Then, I sent them a screenshot of Adam's Instagram. It was a series of posts from his most recent vacation at a 5-star resort, posted with captions like "living my best life" and "hard work pays off." I didn't say a word. I just let the images speak for themselves. I'll admit, I felt a wave of satisfaction when I hit send on that message. It wasn't just about the vacation photos, it was the culmination of everything I had been dealing with. It was the final straw, as they say. The thing that made me realize I wasn't just enabling the cycle of irresponsibility anymore. I had stopped giving in. It was a simple, petty act, but it was the most empowering thing I'd done in months. At first, I didn't hear anything from my parents. They were probably processing it, trying to figure out how to spin the situation. I knew it would take them a while to come to grips with the fact that I wasn't going to just hand over my money to save Adam from his own mess. But after a few days, the texts started flooding in. Karen, my mom, was the first to reach out. She texted me, her tone as sweet as ever, but I could feel the underlying tension. It was like she was trying to play the concerned parent card while also subtly demanding that I fall in line. She wrote, "Mike, we understand that you're upset. But Adam is family, and right now, he's going through a tough time. He needs us. He needs you. Please, don't be like this. We've always been there for you, and now it's time for you to return the favor. If you can't help him, we really don't know what we're going to do." I stared at the message for a good while. It was like a punch to the gut, even though I had been expecting something like this. The guilt trip was thick as ever, and the tone was more manipulative than I cared to admit. I wanted to respond, tell her how ridiculous the whole thing was. But I stayed silent, thinking it over. I wanted them to feel this. A few hours later, my dad, Jim, sent me a message as well. His was more direct, more forceful. I could tell he was trying to play the role of the stern father, attempting to guilt me into doing what they wanted. "Mike, we didn't raise you to act like this. We gave everything to help your brother. Everything. And now, you turn your back on us when we need you most? This isn't how family behaves. You should be ashamed of yourself." This angered me. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about standing up for myself for once. I had always been the good son, the one who never rocked the boat, who did what was expected of him. But I was done with that. I wasn't going to let them guilt me into paying for Adam's mistakes anymore. I didn't respond right away. I let the messages sit in my inbox, knowing full well they were waiting for me to cave. I wanted them to stew in the discomfort of not knowing how I would react. But after a day of silence, I finally decided to hit them with something they wouldn't expect. I replied to both of them at the same time, but I kept it short. I wasn't going to waste any more energy on their manipulation. I'm not giving Adam another dime. I'm not enabling him to continue his irresponsible behavior. If you both want to continue pretending he's not at fault here, that's on you. But I won't be a part of it anymore. It was cold, it was harsh, but it felt so good to say. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was standing up for myself. The days after that were pure chaos. My phone was buzzing nonstop with calls and texts from my parents. They were relentless. At first, it was just more pleading, more guilt trips. My mom called me repeatedly, saying things like, "I'm so disappointed in you, Mike," or "You used to be such a caring son. I can't believe you're doing this to your family." But I didn't pick up. I let it ring, letting the guilt roll off me. The more they called, the more I felt justified in my decision. If they truly thought Adam was the one who needed help, then they should deal with him. I wasn't going to be dragged into this circus anymore. Then, the pressure escalated. One afternoon, I get a call from my aunt, who I rarely talk to. She's on my mom's side of the family, and I could tell she was just the messenger for my parents. She didn't mince words. "Mike, we've all been talking. Your parents are beside themselves. This is family, Mike. You're supposed to help when things get hard, not just turn your back on them. I know you're frustrated, but they did so much for you when you were struggling. This isn't how we treat each other." It felt like a punch in the gut, but I didn't let it show. Instead, I calmly explained the situation once again. I told her about Adam's lack of responsibility, his reckless spending, and how my parents were blindly enabling him. She didn't get it. She didn't want to get it. The family was always going to stick together in situations like this, whether it was right or wrong. She kept repeating that family helps each other, and I kept responding with the same line, not if it means enabling failure. The calls didn't stop. They kept coming, one after another, each more desperate than the last. They tried everything they could think of. Guilt trips, threats of disappointment, even using my childhood as leverage. They brought up how much they sacrificed for me when I was younger, how I owed them this one thing. I was a little shaken by the emotional manipulation at first, but it was clear that they weren't going to change. They were too deep in denial, too invested in protecting Adam from the consequences of his own actions. The more they begged, the more I felt like I had done the right thing. But just when I thought things had reached a boiling point, something unexpected happened. Adam showed up at my door. It was a Wednesday afternoon, a week after I had sent the screenshots of his vacation posts to my parents. I had just finished my lunch when I heard a knock. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I opened the door cautiously. There he was, standing on my doorstep with his hands shoved in his pockets and a sheepish look on his face. "Mike, we need to talk." I didn't even say anything. I just stepped back and let him in. Adam stepped inside, the weight of the situation hanging between us. He was always the type to act like nothing was wrong, but today there was a noticeable tension in his posture. He wasn't his usual cocky self. His shoulders were slumped, and his eyes avoided mine, like he knew what was coming. "Mike, look," he started, but I didn't let him finish. "I don't want to hear any more excuses, Adam," I interrupted. "I've already told you everything I need to say. You messed up, and I'm not bailing you out." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture he often made when he was nervous. "I get it, all right? I get it. But you're not understanding. It's not just about the money anymore." I raised an eyebrow. "Really? Then what's it about, Adam?" "Because as far as I can tell, this whole mess is about the money." He shifted uncomfortably, his gaze flicking around the room like he was looking for an escape. "It's not like that, Mike. I've been trying to fix things. The business, I thought it was going to work. But I messed up. I know that. I made mistakes, okay." "Yeah, you did," I said, my voice colder than I intended. "You spent all the money on trips. You went to Vegas, Adam. Vegas. And now you want me to help you? After all of that?" His face reddened, and for a second, I thought he was going to snap. But then he sighed, defeated. "I don't know what you want me to say. I know I messed up, but I've got nothing left. I'm just asking for a little help." I crossed my arms, leaning against the kitchen counter. "No, Adam. You've had plenty of chances to fix things. But instead of trying to work hard and make the business succeed, you chose to blow all that money on nonsense. And now you want me to clean up your mess." He opened his mouth to respond, but I cut him off. "And don't even think about bringing Mom and Dad into this again. They're the ones who enabled this. They've been sending me texts, trying to guilt me into giving you money, but I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. You need to learn your lesson." There was a long silence. Adam didn't speak for a moment, just standing there, his hands in his pockets. His face contorted in frustration. I could tell he was about to say something, but then the anger shifted, and I saw something else, desperation. "You're really just going to leave me hanging?" he asked quietly. "You're just going to let me fail?" I sighed, running a hand through my hair. I had already made up my mind, but seeing him like this, I felt a flicker of sympathy. He was my brother, after all. I wanted to believe he could get his act together, but I knew deep down that he had to face the consequences of his actions. If I kept bailing him out, he'd never change. "Adam, this is on you," I said firmly. "You can't keep running to people to solve your problems for you. You're an adult now. You need to figure this out yourself. And no amount of whining or guilt tripping is going to change that." He stood there in silence, the words sinking in, but I could see the frustration building behind his eyes. It was as if he couldn't grasp the idea that his actions had consequences, that all of his mismanagement, all of his poor choices had led him here, and there was no easy way out. Then came the worst part. Adam's voice wavered when he spoke next. "So what? You're just going to leave me to deal with this all on my own? You don't care if I lose everything?" It was a cheap shot, one I could see coming from a mile away. But even knowing that, it still hit me hard. I stared at him for a few moments, letting the silence stretch out. I knew I had to say something, but the weight of his words was making it harder than I expected. I opened my mouth to respond, but before I could get the words out, he beat me to it. "You know what, Mike? Fine. You don't want to help? That's your choice. But don't expect me to forget it. Don't think that because you're too proud to lend a hand, you're not part of the reason I'm here." I shook my head slowly. "Adam, I'm not the reason. You're the reason. Your decisions got you into this mess. And you want me to bail you out? Again? After everything you've done?" He didn't respond immediately. Instead, he just turned away, muttering under his breath as he walked toward the door. I could feel the tension in the room, thick and suffocating, as he made his way out of my apartment. It was almost surreal, like everything was happening in slow motion. Just before he left, though, he paused and looked back at me with a smirk. "I'm not done, Mike," he said. "If you think this is over, you've got another thing coming." And with that, he slammed the door behind him. The next few days were a blur of emotions. After Adam left, I didn't hear from him for a while, which I thought was a good sign. Maybe he was finally processing the situation. Maybe he was realizing that he couldn't keep running away from his mistakes. But of course, that wasn't the case. About a week later, I got a text from my mom. Her message was as angry as I'd ever seen it, filled with frustration and resentment. It read, "Mike, I can't believe you. Your brother's in a bad place, and you're making it worse. This is your fault. If you just stepped up and helped him, maybe things would be different. But instead, you're letting him suffer. I'm ashamed of you." That hit me harder than I'd like to admit. It was just another guilt trip, another attempt to manipulate me into doing what they wanted. But now, it didn't affect me the way it used to. I had already made my choice, and there was no going back. I wasn't going to let them drag me back into this mess. As the days passed, I kept thinking about everything that had happened. The constant texts from my mom, the guilt trips, the endless attempts to manipulate me into helping Adam. It was exhausting. I was done being the one to carry everyone else's weight. I wasn't their bailout plan anymore. It wasn't just about the money anymore, either. It was about principle. Adam's failure was his own doing, and I wasn't going to be the one to fix it for him. I'd helped in the past, more times than I cared to count. Each time, it was the same. He'd promised things would change. He'd vow he'd learn from his mistakes, but all that did was give him more chances to fail again. No more. I started ignoring my mom's texts. I didn't respond to the calls either. I knew what they wanted, and I wasn't going to give in. There was no amount of guilt they could throw at me that would change my mind. I had a life to live, and I wasn't going to let them drag me into their toxic cycle any longer. They had their own choices to make, and they were going to have to live with them. A week passed without any real communication, and I thought, maybe, just maybe, they'd come to their senses. But then, one night, I got a phone call. I glanced at the screen. It was my mom. I took a deep breath, let it out slowly, and then answered. "Mike, we need to talk," she said, her voice already tinged with frustration. "About what?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. I wasn't in the mood for another round of guilt trips. "About your brother. He's in over his head, Mike. He needs help," she said. "He can't do it alone. You owe it to him." I clenched my jaw, my grip tightening on the phone. "Mom, I don't owe him anything. He's the one who messed this up, not me. You and Dad keep bailing him out, and you're not doing him any favors. I'm not going to keep enabling this." Her tone shifted to something more pleading. "He's family, Mike. We're family. Don't you care about us? You can't just turn your back on him like this." I shook my head, even though she couldn't see me. "I'm not turning my back on anyone. I'm just not going to keep cleaning up someone else's mess. I've done it enough. I'm tired of being the one to sacrifice for him, to make it easier for him when he's made a choice to be reckless. I'm done." There was a pause on the other end of the line. I could practically hear the gears turning in her head, trying to figure out what angle to play next. I knew she was hoping I'd cave in, but this time, I wasn't going to budge. "Mike, please, we're your family," she repeated, but there was an edge of desperation in her voice now. "You can't just abandon him. If you don't help him, we don't know what's going to happen. He's already in a bad place. What if it's too late?" My patience wore thin. It's not too late for him to take responsibility for his own actions. You want to fix things for him? Fine, but not with my money. Not with me cleaning up his mistakes. He's an adult. It's time he learns how to handle his own problems. I paused, making sure my words sank in. I'm not going to be your scapegoat. If you and Dad keep enabling him, then that's your problem. But I'm done with it. I could feel the weight of her silence over the phone, and I knew she was trying to come up with something that would change my mind. But she had nothing. This wasn't about me anymore. It was about them refusing to see that Adam's failure wasn't my fault, and it wasn't my responsibility to fix it. After a few seconds, she spoke again, quieter this time. I can't believe you're doing this, Mike. I thought you'd be there for us. I thought you were a part of this family." And with that, she hung up. It stung. Hearing her say that hurt in a way I wasn't expecting. But deep down, I knew it was the right decision. This wasn't about family loyalty anymore. This was about standing my ground. I couldn't keep giving up my time, my money, my energy for people who couldn't even acknowledge their own faults. That night, I sat there in silence, staring at my phone, thinking about everything that had happened over the last few months. I knew what I had to do, and I wasn't going to let anyone make me feel guilty for it anymore. A few days later, Adam tried reaching out to me again. Same story, he was struggling, he needed help, and this time he'd do better. I didn't even respond. Not because I didn't care, but because I did. I cared enough to let him face the consequences of his actions. I cared enough to stop enabling him. And just like that, the phone call stopped. The text stopped. The guilt trip stopped. They had no more leverage, no more strings to pull. I was done. I was finally free from that toxic cycle. So, Reddit, I'm asking you, was I wrong to cut them off like this? Should I have just kept helping? Or is it time to let them figure things out for themselves? Honestly, I'm still conflicted about whether I made the right call. What do you think?